Well, hello to our listeners. I'm Karen Salisbury,
And I'm Julie Summers.
and we are still here, still talking. And we are a heartfelt podcast where two lifelong friends share the wisdom and hard earned insights that come from decades of life experience. And today, Julie and I are going to talk about promises, the ones that have been kept and the ones that have been broken. How do we feel about that?
It's a good subject. There's so many things. I like to promise. I would like to promise the world to everyone, but I have to look at my own capabilities, I have to look at my promises realistically.
Yes, we do. The ones that we promise to ourselves and ones that we promise to others. And then, of course, the ones that, the promises made to us. We have to look at them all realistically. Which ones are true? Which ones can really be kept? Not as you had talked about before, nothing grandiose.
And, promises are the highest form of trust. We have to honor our word, communication, what is realistic. It's very important to remember if we've made a promise and we can't follow through, to cancel early and it's very important to practice follow up through too. Think about your promise before you make it. Is it reasonable? Can you do it? Less is better. Follow through is better. Start simple so people became trustworthy in you and you become trustworthy in yourself.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, um, the as my father had taught me years ago, and I mean I was a small child, was basically that the your promise when you give it, that's your word. And he told me, he says, that's the only thing you take with you when you're gone, basically when you die. And that is your word, because no one will ever get your word again after you're gone. So that was very powerful to me, is that, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I promise myself or if I promise somebody else, then it's like I'll do whatever I could do to keep that promise. And yes, like you said, Julie, if you can't if it's not realistic, or if something happens and you can't follow through, definitely speak up early to be able to say to the other person or persons that I can't keep that promise, and then make whatever accommodations, whatever the changes that need to be done to either continue to fulfill the promise, or you just come, basically break off the promise completely.
Trust and respect is so important. It protects your integrity and proves to others that you can be depended on. And more people will invest in you and you're invest in them. The relationship is just so important to keep your integrity in place, intact.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Trust is fragile and it is easily eroded. Absolutely. And um, trust is built on those very small moments. They don't have to be big, huge, grandiose. They're built on the small things that just build up over time. And once that trust is lost, it's really hard to rebuild it, because trust is built up over time because of the very small moments over time. So when it's broken in just a moment, it doesn't take a lot of time to to break that trust. It can be just instant, and but it takes a lot to rebuild it, and some never get rebuilt.
Sometimes too, it's personal integrity, consistently honoring yourself on commitments, blusters self-esteem, and proves your word really carries. When I break a promise, it does affect my self-esteem as well as the other person may be hurt by it.
Mm, yes. Um, that is, promises. When a promise is given to us, we definitely count on it. I know I tell people I operate on what you tell me. So if they make a promise to me, then I am going to operate on that promise. I will build things around that promise. It's like building a house of cards. And then if the promise is broken, then my house of cards falls down, because I built everything around that promise. So it's very important, anybody, to all of our listeners, that is why it's so important to, when you make a promise, to keep that promise, because the other individual or individuals are building their life around that promise.
It's so true. And it's again, it's very important to be realistic about what you can offer yourself and others and to manage the commitments. You need to track everything, put it on the calendar. Because if you need to break a commitment, the other thing is transparency. If you need to break the commitment, let that person know well in advance, not to wait to the last minute so they in turn can find somebody up for backup.
That's right. Right. Like I was saying, like building the house of cards, I build um, all of my additional activities, present and future, on that promise, on that commitment. And if I'm told up front, ahead of time, then I'm granted the opportunity to be able to, like you said, find somebody else to come in, or at least change whatever it is that I'm doing to for the accommodation of the commitment that can't be kept. Very true.
There's so many things that as I get older, as we get older in age, I can feel very frustrated because I cannot do, like, I would love to help everyone, honestly. Karen and I, we both have this good, kind heart, but as we're getting older, I have to be realistic and I just can't give as much physically and sometimes mentally that I like to do.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Julie. It's like as I've gotten older, it's like I can't commit to everything that shows up. So I have to definitely look at my calendar, check things out, uh, not make a hard commit, say, let me check into it, I'll look at it later, because I never know what's going on, especially as I've gotten older. It's like, hey, I might wake up and not feel so good. So yeah, so we changed through the years, right?
We do. And Karen, I love that when you was telling me about you gave blood yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. Richard and I, we like to donate blood, and we do that every couple of months. And so we were there yesterday, and this is just an example of not making that commitment, not making a promise. After we went, um, we uh, the after I donated the blood, the attendant came over and asked. She had a little calendar in front of her, her little tablet ready to schedule. And she says, "Oh, would you like to schedule for your next appointment, for your next donation?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I would like to do that, but not right now." I said, because it's 2 months out. I said, "I'll do it on my own. I know how to use the internet. I can go online like I always do. A couple of days before I'm ready to make the appointment, I go online and I schedule." And as I was telling you, Julie, I said the reason why I do that, I didn't want to make that appointment 2 months out, is because I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 2 months. And I didn't want to make that commitment only for me to, in 2 months, something comes up and I have to call and cancel it. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have the burden of, oh, I got to cancel something that I made a promise for. So I just didn't even commit. But I will in 2 months. I will go ahead and check online and make the appointment.
So
That's
again,
how I handle.
you're reflecting on your capabilities and being realistic. And it depends on what the promise might be. I mean, some problems are bigger. My son of last year, he was going to leave his house on a vacation for a couple months, and he asked me if I could watch his house and take care of his animals and he lives out in the woods and as much as I wanted to say yes, as much as I wanted to help him, I had to be transparent. And I did tell him though I would think about it and let him know the next day. That's what I try and do too. I try and when somebody asks me before I make a promise now, I try and step up so I'm just not ego driven, I'm just
Mm.
ego. I just want to make everyone happy, and I have to like it can't be about lifting me up to make someone else feel better, if that makes any sense. So I
Yeah, it
stepped
does.
back and I called him the next day, and I had to tell him as much as I would, but it's not does I'm sorry, but I can't. And I didn't have to really get into any of it. I mean, I didn't have to get into my I don't know if I could do it physically and whatnot. I didn't have to get into any of that. I
Hmm.
just said, I'm sorry, but I would love to help you, but I can't in this area.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I just like to reiterate, it's like when you break your own promise, you're not just hurting others, you're actually fracturing your own identity and values. So it's important, like what you did with your son is, you didn't make that commitment, no matter what the size is, small or large, because you didn't want to break it, because it does, the promise, your word becomes a mirror of your integrity, as you mentioned, and breaking it reshapes your internal sense of self and can leave lasting emotional scars. I know that in the past, that if I've had to break a promise that I made with somebody because of some circumstance that occurred, I mean, it stayed with me for a long time, internally. It bothered me for a very long time. So I didn't like that feeling. And I know I always worked very hard to always keep my word, no matter what, at what cost, no matter what it was. And there's been a few times in my past where I have kept the promise, um, even though there was circumstances that could have stopped me. And then the person that I made the promise to was aware, and they're like, "And you still showed up? You
Hmm.
were right." I mean, they were just flabbergasted. They were like, "Well, anybody else would have canceled." And I said, "Nope. I told you I was going to be here, so I'm here." So it's about, you know, it's an integrity. It's a internal sense of self. And it's so important to do what you're talking about, managing what you can and cannot commit to, so that you don't have any devastating effects.
True. And because I said to him no sooner than later, it took the pressure off. It took the pressure off me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it also gave him enough time to be able to find somebody to come into his house and take care of his house and his animals. So, in a sense, I did give him a gift. I gave him a gift of time. I
yes,
allowed him to have more time to find what he needed that I realistically could not give him.
yes. That's very important. And that's like what you said, and we said, I said already as well, is that if you make a promise, it's okay if you have to change it, if circumstances prevent you, but definitely give the gift of time to the other person or persons, to be able to make accommodations. Because, like I mentioned, like the house of cards,
Mm.
we don't want it to all fall down, and there's no time to rebuild. It's like, definitely give that time. So that was very good that you did that for your son. Yeah, give the gift of time.
Well, thank you. And also my promises, I don't I focus on I don't compromise on safety. Like safety and health to my friends and others comes first. Like
Yes.
I will try and feel those commitments. Those are like number one for me. Canceling maybe on a social engagement, like, maybe not a wedding, but an outdoor band or whatever it might be. But when it comes to I always think safety first.
Yeah, that's very important. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people don't realize that, is that when you make promises, and something has to be changed, is definitely take into consideration the safety of it, for yourself or for the other person. I know there was a time that an individual was meeting me at my house after work with their small young child, and I was at work, and the person at work was trying to keep me after hours, and I was just like, I made a promise, and it's winter time, and I said, I made a promise to this person. They're meeting me at my house. They can't get into my house. They don't have a key, and they got a small child. I have got to go. I didn't care. I didn't care that the that
Hmm.
work was. I didn't care if they were going to fire me. And this is before
Hmm.
cell phones, so I couldn't call because there was no cell phones. But it was like I got to go because I made a promise, and for the safety of the child being out there in the cold, it was like gotta go.
Hmm.
You can fire me, but I'm not going to put that child in harm's way.
Such a powerful story, Karen. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I find that at work too, like everybody, you're expected to be at work every day. And I'm in a place in my life where I don't have young kids at home. And there are people that I work with, they have young families. And sometimes
Mm,
they just can't come in. And I've told them too, your family comes first. Your commitment and your promises to your family comes first.
yeah.
Always.
When I worked at uh, a personal personnel department, actually it was a temporary agency. There we go. This was like 35 years ago. It was a temporary agency, and we also did permanent placement. So I interviewed a lot of people throughout the week, especially young women that were reentering the workforce, because they wanted to do mother's hours. They wanted to come in and just do a couple of weeks worth of work or whatever it was. And there were occasions where people would bring in their children with them. And a lot of times they'd be so apologetic. I have my son, I have my child, or whatever, with me. And they expected me as the HR person, as the person interviewing them for a job, that I was going to be, upset or disappointed in them for bringing the child, or that I was going to make them invalid for the position. But I would just look at them and say, children are first. I said, if you couldn't find a babysitter, then absolutely, it's a-okay that you brought them with you. We'll continue with the interview. And it even happened in massage. There were a few times that my clients would bring in their child and they'd be so apologetic that, they had to bring their child, but they didn't want to cancel the appointment, just like the young women didn't want to cancel their interview appointments. And I just looked at them and I said, you know, children are first. Bring them in. It's okay. We'll do what we can. We'll work around it. There's not a problem. And I know I've talked to other individuals, HR people, as well as fellow massage therapists that would actually said to me, "No way! I wouldn't have done that. I would have told them to leave, go home." And it's like,
Mm.
safety first, and I certainly didn't want the person to cancel on me. So I would do whatever I could to accommodate. It's important to do that. And like you said, and reiterating it, is that safety for the children, for family, you do whatever you can, whether it's, no matter what kind of work it is. And I'm sure even in some social settings, fa- you know, family is first. Be aware of safety and security.
Yes, family first, safety first. Making promises is a juggling act. And
Yeah,
it's really about balance and knowing what's best for you in those decisions and what's best for the other person is
yeah,
so important to do. And how do we rebuild when we break a trust? It's people remember these things.
yes, they do. I
And
mean,
so,
because broken promises hurt, and they hurt because they trigger biological, psychological, and relational systems, and that has evolved to protect us from danger and betrayal. And so, yeah, it's so important.
so sometimes to wait to once you make some promises, you lose trust. But as I get older again, I'm realizing everybody's in different places and the person might mean well, the good intentions. There's always those good intentions. So it's better. I find for myself, I'm just going to share my own experience that
Yes.
I start off small. It might be little things. I was sharing this with Karen. It's like my neighbors are elderly, and I can't make a big commitment to do their shopping, and I just can't. My life, I'm not able to do that at this point. Maybe
Mm,
somewhere down the line, but at this point, I know to make a commitment once a week or 2 weeks. It doesn't. I just can't. So the other day, as I'm coming out, I had my basket. My daughter laughs at me about my basket. I live in an apartment. I need a basket to go to the grocery store, bring it down the elevator, bring it up. But I was pulling it out the door, and my neighbors were outside. The gentleman was outside, and I said, "Oh, I'm running the store. Do you need anything?" And he said, "Yeah, could you get me a couple things?" So I was able to do that. I can do those little things, but and I'm okay with that, that I still have my arms opened to others to help and make those kind of, the softer promises. They're important. Those softer promises
yes.
are there. The smaller, softer promises mean a lot, and it's good for you and it's good for them because you can follow through.
Right. Right. I agree with that. Absolutely. Is keeping many of the promises. They don't have to be big. They don't have to be enormous. Like, hey, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to drive you across the country. But it might be, hey, yes, I'll take you over to the doctor's appointment. I will be there and pick you up and take you. Or, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Would you like for me to pick something up for you and pick it up? I mean, I had broken promises so many times, and I'm sure each and every single one of our listeners have had that, and they hurt. I mean, I can remember one, it was insignificant, but it still hurt. It was a bunch of us, family members. We were going to go to the camp for the weekend, and I gave money for food, and I had a cast on my leg, and so I couldn't really shop. And I said, yeah, if you're going to go shopping, hey, the only thing I want is roast beef. Whatever anything else that you get, it's fine. But hey, can you pick up roast beef for me? And I gave them $80. So then they went shopping, and then when I went the next day to drop off some coolers to them, um, the family member said to me, "Oh, we didn't pick up your roast beef." And I was just like, "But that was the only thing I asked you to do. You said you were going to do that. You said you were going to get it." And I mean, it just hurt me inside, that they didn't do that. Because now I'm like, well, if I want the roast beef, which was the only thing I wanted for the entire weekend, um, then I was going to have to go shopping with the cast on my leg. So, and crutches. It's not easy, folks. so, so yeah. So even just those small little things like that. I mean, it was so insignificant,
Mhm.
but it hurt. So we have to keep those things in mind, that even though that family member thought it was nothing, it meant a lot to me if they had done it. But in hindsight, yeah, it's insignificant. But it was because I couldn't go shopping for myself. I was driving with my left leg because the cast was on my right leg. It was really an inconvenience.
So
Uh,
how do we rebuild trust, right? So I guess
yes,
it's important to remember you to own the mistake. Like, I'm sorry. And then to recommit with a new, cleaner timeline, and then start small and be consistent. That's what's more important. Small, whatever your commitment is, whatever your promise is, to be consistent. And before you make that promise, really evaluate the situation and whether you're going to be able to follow through.
yes, that is very, very true. Wise words there, Julie. Yeah, because those repeated broken promises can erode self-esteem, and they can increase anxiety and make any person more guarded in future, in the relationships in the future. So if you give your word, folks, keep your word. And if you can't, then certainly talk about it with enough notice, so that the other person can make accommodations, whatever it is that they need to do. So keep your promises where you can.
And to our listeners, we want to hear from you. Your stories matter, your voices matter. Reach out anytime. Our email address is stillherestilltalking@yahoo.com.
Yes. And also just want to say thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate you. We are still here, still talking. We're not experts, we're just experienced.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Thank you, and have a good day.